And the foundations of the wall of the city were garnished with all manner of precious stones. The first foundation was jasper, the second sapphire, the third a chalcedony, the fourth an emerald, the fifth sardonyx, the sixth sardius, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth a topaz, the 10th a chrysoprasus, the 11th a jacinth, the 12th an amethyst. And the 12 gates were 12 pearls. Every several gate was of one pearl, and the street of the city was pure gold, as it were transparent glass. Isaiah 54. Sing, O barren, thou that didst not bear, break forth into singing and cry aloud, thou that didst not travail with child. For more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married wife, saith the Lord. Enlarge the place of thy tent, and let them stretch forth the curtains of thine habitations. Spare not, lengthen thy cords, and strengthen thy stakes. For thou shalt break forth on the right hand and on the left, and thy seed shall inherit the Gentiles, and make the desolate cities to be inhabited. Fear not, for thou shalt not be ashamed, neither be thou confounded, for thou shalt not be put to shame. For thou shalt forget the shame of thy youth, and shalt not remember the reproach of thy widowhood any more. For thy Maker is thine husband, the Lord of hosts is his name, and thy Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. The God of the whole earth shall he be called. For the Lord hath called thee as a woman forsaken and grieved in spirit, and a wife of youth, when thou wast refused, saith thy God. For a small moment have I forsaken thee, but with great mercies will I gather thee. In a little wrath I hid my face from thee for a moment, but with everlasting kindness will I have mercy on thee, saith the Lord thy Redeemer. For this is as the waters of Noah unto me. For as I have sworn that the waters of Noah should no more go over the earth, so have I sworn that I would not be wroth with thee, nor rebuke thee. For the mountains shall depart, and the hills be removed, but my kindness shall not depart from thee, neither shall the covenant of my peace be removed, saith the Lord that hath mercy on thee. O thou afflicted, tossed with tempest, and not comforted, behold, I will lay thy stones with fair colors, and lay thy foundations with sapphires. And I will make thy windows of agates, and thy gates of carbuncles, and all thy borders of pleasant stones.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Rakakadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers. And peace and blessings and salutations to the hopeful elect out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds. In the name of Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Al Shah. All right, well, I want to get into today, how truth, is a lost art in this beast system, because when you go into, this society, this devil, has heaped up, great confusion in the earth, all right, and this is the way that Esau, rules and stays, steps ahead of the masses, is to keep everyone divided, and confused. Okay, there's no true stance on truth. This man lied, all right, and continues to lie about everything. This whole system is built on deception. All right, this system functions, based on people, believing, in lies and deception. You see, this society is not built to run off truth. The cultural norms, what people call a culture, especially here in the West, It's all based off lies and deception. Okay, gray areas. All right, this man has filled the earth, with partial truth, gray areas, and complete darkness, man. Okay, so I want to read this here, get a few precepts, and then I got a video kind of expounds on the psyche, of the West, which is ass backwards. It's Habakkuk 1:6. It says, "For lo, I will raise up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation, which shall march through the breadth of the land to possess the dwelling places that are not theirs." Okay, and you had the Neo Babylonian Empire, possessed, all right, possessed the lands of other nations, and you had, that were made up the Neo Babylonian Empire. They reigned over other nations, other kingdoms, okay, but this is Babylon the Great, so everything would be on a much grander scale, all right, because Babylon the Great would do this to the earth, okay, they will go around, the globe and do this. The Neo Babylonian Empire did it in a region of the earth. Babylon the Great does these things, all right, throughout the circumference of the earth. Okay, so you go, verse 7 says, "They are terrible and dreadful. Their judgment and their dignity shall proceed of themselves. Their horses also are swifter than the leopards, and are more fierce than the even wolves, and their horsemen shall spread themselves, and their horsemen shall come from far. They shall fly as the eagle that hasteth to eat." Man, speaking of this man's military, which his military is spread throughout the earth. All right, all these military bases, okay, because the Esau Edom, through America has colonized the earth. Majority of the earth, is carved up into territories ruled and what Edomites are the overlords. Okay, and the main thing that he does, the first thing that he does when he takes down new territory, he gets control over the media, the information. Okay, and he takes these nations to war. And one thing about it, he uses his contractors to come, and rebuild. Okay, get these, governments alone. And one thing, when he rebuilds, those schools and particular thing, guess what? He indoctrinates them with his confusion. Okay, and it says, their judgment, their dignity shall proceed of themselves. Yeah, they, set the standard of what's right and wrong, according to them, not according to truth, not according to the righteousness of the scriptures, but according to how they see it. Okay, and this is the society that they established. All right, it says, "They shall come all for violence, their faces shall sup up as the east wind, and they shall gather the captivity as the sand, and they shall scoff at kings, and the princes shall be a scorn unto them. They shall deride every stronghold, for they shall heap dust and take it." All right, now in the ancient world talk, heaping dust, talking about building ramps, okay, to do sieges, because you would build, a ramp, that was built for your army to go over the walls, okay, to invade, a city, okay, to invade another nation. You see, but these devils, they heap up dust by confusion. They heap up confusion. Okay, Babylon and grapes heaps up dust in the form of confusion. Okay, they're able to take, societies by confusion. People are confused. Okay, westernization is a big form of confusion, man. It's a culture of gray areas, darkness, okay, and partial truth. Okay, so let's go here, all right, because the scriptures speak about that as well in Isaiah. Then we'll get to the video. But when you go to Isaiah, okay, let's get this real quick. Isaiah 59. All right, it's the book of Isaiah, chapter 59, and verse, get to the point 15. It says, "Yeah, truth faileth, and he that departed from evil maketh himself a prey." Okay, so this is society, all right, where truth faileth. Matter of fact, let me read verse 14. Let me go, especially amongst, Jake. Okay, I read verse 13. It says, "In transgression and lying against the Lord Yahweh Bashim Al Shai." Yeah, because everyone's perception, of the Heavenly Father, from a Western standpoint, okay, is skewed, is off. It's based off lies. You see that this world doesn't know the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, okay, or his son, or the righteousness of the scriptures, okay. This world, all right, has been confused on that, and it's been intentionally confused on that, okay. That way, this devil can run with his narrative, okay, of Christianity, which ultimately Christianity is just Edomite supremacy, okay, because this man has confused people so much. In the Bible, he's able to just pull a narrative out of his ass where he's superior. Okay. It says, and departing away from our power, speaking oppression and revolt, conceiving and uttering from the heart words of falsehood. Okay. Words of falsehood, and judgment is turned away backward, and justice standeth afar off. For truth is fallen in the street, and equity cannot enter. Okay, let's see what you say in the NLT. He said, truth is falling in the streets. Yeah, truth is not the standard anymore. Everything is based off opinions, emotions, gray areas. Okay, you see opinions. It has nothing to do with truth. Okay, it says, our courts oppose the righteous, and justice is nowhere to be found. Okay, because this is a society that upholds wickedness. But here, not only is okay not the standard, but they look at truth as hate. You call a woman, all right, that's trying to be a man, you call her a woman. That's hate speech. She's born a woman, but she's able to change herself in this society, so-called change herself, so-called transition. And if you call her a woman, then that's hate. So not only is truth not the standard, all right, it's deemed hate. Okay, complete bizarro world, upside down society, man. It says our courts oppose the righteous, and justice is nowhere to be found. Truth stumbles in the streets, and honesty has been outlawed. Yeah, truth is gone, and anyone who renounces evil is attacked. The Lord looked and was displeased to find that there was no justice, man. And the Lord hates this current society and how it's being ran, all right, based off falsehood, lies, and deception, man. Okay, and who's the blame for that, man? You know, who's the one that shoulder, okay, that blame for having a society, okay, of deception, lies, all right, and falsehood, man? It's Esau Edom. Okay, as Yahweh Shah said, this man was a liar from the beginning, the father of it. Okay, so let's go here. This is my guy. All right, you know, Uncle Boslin. You see, Shaheed Boslin. Okay, which he's gonna go in, okay, on the psyche of the West when it comes to truth. So I'm gonna let him go for a minute, and then we'll come back with more precepts.
It for millennia, and it has become a pathology. That pathology has become your culture until you no longer know how to interact. You don't know how to engage with the truth. You don't know how to be honest. Because again, as I say, truth is not just about the words you say. It's a posture of your soul itself. Truth begins long before your tongue ever moves, before the mind ever starts assembling the words to say. Honesty is a covenant inside your heart. It's a willingness to face reality as it is, because you know that you will eventually face the one who made reality. And when that covenant is broken, the lies that you speak, that's just the leakage. That's why the problem isn't just propaganda. Propaganda is just a tool. It's an outgrowth of an already existing dishonest culture, of a culture that already does not value the truth or even recognize that there is such a thing. The deeper disease is a moral habit. It's a moral habit that trains a person to treat reality as optional. Moral relativism, It sounds academic. Like I said, it's beginner level nihilism. Nothing matters. And that creates a sort of safe house of ambiguity where nothing is actually binding. No truth is strong enough to actually.
And I want to get that term nihilism, that he spoke on. So let's get it here, to get understanding what he's speaking about, and this explains, this society, You know, it's a society based off nihilism. And when you go into all right, nihilism, okay, so like, where, where, where do we start? Mm-mm. All right, so it says nihilism is a philosophical, okay, belief that life is without objective meaning, purpose, or intrinsic value. It often include skepticism toward moral truth, religious belief, or social structures. So when you go into it, it says in short, and nihilism says nothing really matters. Okay, that's why a society that you can just, you know, being a man is optional. No matter what you're born with, that's optional. Being a woman is optional. Being a mother, that's optional. A wife, that's optional. A husband, that's optional. Okay, two-parent household, that's optional. Everything is optional. Nothing really matters. Okay, you see, having a career, having the skill, these things are optional. Okay, you see, a higher power, well, that's optional. Believing in the higher power, that's optional. You see, so when you go to key ideas of nihilism, all right, now nihilism, if I'm saying it right, it says no inherent meaning to life. Human existence has no universal purpose or destiny, man, and that's why you see, that's why you have things called a drill culture. There's no value of life in this society. Okay, that's why people glorify in the self-destructive culture. Okay, because the people are just out here with no meaning. That's why scriptures speak about those that were born in vain. It said rejection of moral values. There are no objective moral standards. Morality is subjective or constructive. Skepticism towards truth. Truth is seen as relative, all right, or even unknowable. Okay. Rejection of authority. Traditional systems like religion, government, or culture are often viewed as baseless. Okay. So it says types of nihilism, okay, is life. Well, let's go to the beliefs. It says life has no eccentric meaning or value. No action is morally right or wrong. Okay, that's why you have these endless debates about whether abortion is wrong, whether the alphabet community is wrong, whether Satanism is wrong, whether things that are obviously wrong. There's a debate about it. Okay, it said knowledge is impossible or meaningless. Okay, reject political or social structures. You see, so this is a society of nihilism, man. Okay, to where it's just full of gray areas and nothing really has meaning. There's really no definite truth. There's really no definite wrong or right. Okay, that's why they have sayings like "my truth" and you know, your truth and all these different things, because it creates gray areas and it takes away true accountability. Okay, but the Lord's finna get ready to hold everybody accountable. You see, no matter what, you can be, you can have a mindset of not believing or thinking like a nihilist, but hey, this doesn't pardon you from accountability when the Lord begins to judge, man. Okay.
Is in instincts and appetites. No meaning is heavy enough to cause you to submit and discipline yourself. So in that fog, deception doesn't feel like deception anymore. It's just an alternative perspective. That's the confusion they create. And accountability, again, just becomes another word game, a point scoring debate. You dodge and deflect and evade. You throw counter punches, you throw curveballs, or what have you. Anything that you can do, if you can obscure the truth, if you can make the point of a discussion get lost in the quagmire of all your, non sequiturs, your red herrings, your straw men, then you win. If you do that, you win. You actually believe in a form of engagement in which it is possible to win against the truth, against reality. You think if you can dazzle and you can distract and you can confuse until the truth gets sidelined, that means you win. And if you win, then that means that whatever you said to win is true. You're validated when your lie wins an argument, as if winning an argument makes what you said true, makes it not a lie. Do you understand? But that's how you think. That's how the West thinks. This is how estranged and alienated and disconnected you are from reality. how disconnected your culture has made you from reality. I mean, look at the sequence. Before anyone crafts a false argument, something inside them has already decided that the outcome matters more than the truth, meaning winning the argument by hook or by crook. That matters more than what's actually real and what's actually true. Reflect on that. Do you know how dangerous that is? Do you know how dangerous of a position that is to take? That's a theological position. You think that you're living in a reality where you will not be audited. You understand? This dismisses the day of judgment when speech and silence are both going to be evidence for you or against you. Listen, this is why I've talked about how we in this life, Muslims in this life, have to be witnesses, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us. We have to be witnesses in this world with integrity, because you're going to face the bare bones reality, the absolute truth on the day of judgment. Everything is going to be audited. Everything that you said, everything that you did, everything that you didn't say and didn't do. There are no alternative versions of reality on that day, no narratives. And there's no moral relativism on that day. You understand? So if you construct an internal fiction, a private universe, where cause and effect can be defied or distorted, where you can repaint facts, where you're the arbiter of the truth, then you're denying the day of judgment. You are denying the day of judgment. Look, you know the story of Cain and Abel, right? Christians have that story. And so do Muslims, Qabil and Habil. So Cain offered a lackluster sacrifice, an offering, and it was rejected. But he spun a narrative that his offering was only rejected because God was unfairly biased against him and unfairly preferential to Abel, to Habil. Well, that's the story of the West, because it was never about the material substance of Cain's offering. It was the deficiency of his intention, the deficiency of his sincerity. And he became envious of his brother, and he became angry at God, and he killed his brother in an act of envy and resentment. Well, that's literally the whole history of Western so-called civilization.
In the spirit, we understand Cain to be who? Esau, Edom of today. Now let's get some scriptures, okay? Because he speak about how, because America is a debate culture. That's why everybody wants to debate, all right? And people want to debate not based on truth, but just to sound right, okay? That's why there's no building. That's why confusion only increases. That's why, debate, it doesn't get anywhere, all right? So let's go to some precepts that speak against debate, and then how at the end of the day, everyone's going to be judged off of standard, okay? When the Lord, all right, brings judgment to the earth, it's going to be a judgment off of standard, okay? Not about, all right, what seems right in the debate, because you can get someone that knows how to argue and seem right and make the other person look foolish, but they wrong as hell, okay? So it's a society of, it's a culture of debate, all right? But winning the debate doesn't mean, all right, that it's the truth, okay? And that's why debates are pointless for the most part, all right? So let's go to, let's get that Second Timothy. Get that in Second Timothy, chapter 2. All right, Second Timothy 2, and start at 20. Yep, Second Timothy 2, and 3. It says, "Again, I say, don't get involved in foolish, ignorant arguments that only starts fights." Okay, and this is a society, with just a bunch of foolish, all right, ignorant arguments, man. There's these never-ending arguments, man. Okay, why the hell is there still an argument about what's a woman? Why is that even an argument? Okay, why is there an argument about the man's role, the woman's role? Why is there an argument? Okay, why is it an argument? Does a man, does a woman need a man? Okay, why is this even an argument? It's a foolish, non-ending argument, man. And all it does is starts endless debates about nothing. Okay, you see, it just endless debates. Okay, and it says, let's go here, the Titus 3. Let's go to Titus. Let's go to the book of Titus, chapter 3. And that's just one of many. There's many crazy arguments of this society. All right, Titus 3:9 said, "Do not get involved into foolish discussions about spiritual pedigrees or in quarrels and fights about obedience." Let me see. Let me get this in the NLT. All right, because Jake was doing this back during the time of the Greeks. To show you how that goes back to Western culture. Debate philosophies. Everybody had the deepest philosophy, the greatest philosophy, the greatest sayings. Okay, it goes back to the Greco-Roman Empire. Okay, it said, but avoid foolish questions and genealogies and contentions and scribings about the law, for they are unprofitable and vain. All right, or Jake telling you that he can keep the whole law. All right, that's unprofitable, man. Okay, you can't do that. All right, they couldn't do it back then in their sovereignty. How the hell we're gonna do it in captivity? All right, but Jacob want to argue about that all day. Okay, foolish, crazy ass questions, man. Jake trying to debate the 12 tribes chart and all this is just unprofitable. Okay, but this is the society, okay, of Esau, where everything is debatable. Nothing is concrete. Okay, there's no standard. The goalpost can be moved. You see, verse 3 says, "A man that is a heretic after the first and second admonition reject." Man, yeah, because we're not here to continue to go back and forth about these endless, all right, scribings, okay, and foolish questions, okay, and pointless debates. Okay, the truth is what it is. All right, we're teaching you what it is, not what we think. It's not debatable. Truth ain't debatable, man. Okay, when we talk about who salvation is for, we talk about, all right, who Esau Edom is, the so-called white man. These things are not debatable. They are what they are. Okay, and if you believe it or not, that's on you. Okay, but we're not here to bend over backwards and argue with you for hours about things that we know to be the truth. We're operating on the standard. Okay, that's why you go to Romans 14. Okay, let's get there. Romans 14. All right, there's Romans 14:19. It says, "Let us therefore follow after things which make for peace." Okay, all these, just heated arguments about, nothing. Okay, no solution, just heated arguments about nothing. Okay, and it says, "And things wherewith one may edify another man." See, the spirit of Yahweh Bashim Al Shai, the church is being built. The believers are being built by this word. These lessons are going out, and the believers, okay, even the scriptures say the body edified itself, okay, and we're building each other up. Okay, we're not leaving these live screens confused. We're not leaving these lessons and the camps and the street teaching. We're not leaving confused. No, we're leaving with more clarity than when we came. Okay, we're leaving, having more faith than when we came. You see, we're just constantly adding. When you're building, you're constantly adding to what you're building. Okay, but when you're arguing about the measurements, you're not building anything, man. Okay, because this world doesn't have a standard. It's just confusion and gray areas, man. All right, that's why even Yahweh Shai, what's that in the book of Matthew? I think there's Matthew 5:37. Yep, it says, "But let your communication be yea, yea, or nay, nay. For whatsoever is more than these cometh of evil," man. Yeah, man. See, our communication should be yea, yea. It should be direct. One thing about the truth, too, it teaches us to be direct, man. Okay? Not this double talk, not saying one thing but doing something else, and not, the truth teaches us to be straightforward, man. Okay? Teaches us to be real first and foremost with ourselves. Okay? But the truth isn't about gray area. This what it is. The MOTB. This what it is. It could be this. It might include. No, This what it is, man. All right, because anything outside of that is gray areas and it's evil. Whenever there's gray areas, there's room for evil. Okay, if you're saying one thing and you really don't mean it, or you're saying something and you're leaving room for, doubt and gray areas, then that's evil, man. Yahweh Shah told us to be direct, yay, yay, or nay, nay. Okay, to be direct, this the truth. This what it is, man. Okay, so let's go here. Easy, because it's another one in Matthew 12. All right, get a couple more. All right, you go to the book of Matthew chapter 12, okay, and verse 36. All right, and it says, "But I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account therefore in the day of judgment. For by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned." Okay, so people are going to have to give account for their action, their behavior, their rejection of truth. Okay, you see, the Lord not coming back, all right, to join the debate. No, he's coming back to judge. Okay, what you've done in this grace period, and everyone has been, all you Israelites have been exposed to the truth. Okay, you have no cloak for your sin. So you can play dumb and still try to operate in these gray areas. No, the Lord is coming to judge, all right, according to a standard. Okay, and either you're going to be justified within this grace period or you're going to be condemned. Ain't no in between. Okay, so that's the point. Just wanted to get into that. Listening to that this segment, that video dealing with Shaheed Boslin. But Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters edified. To the next time I say Shalom, Kwam Yashala, Abab, Abal, Soon, Shalom.